clogged ports and empty shelves, frustrated customers and businesses, and an uneasy feeling for people thinking about Christmas gifts this year. How exactly did we get here? I'd like to hear from you on this, whether you're a consumer or a business owner. How have the supply chain delays this year affected you? Perhaps you're waiting on presents to arrive or work gear. Will the delays in postage and transport change how you order in the lead up to Christmas? Head to our Facebook page, ABC Radio National, and join the conversation there. Joining me for this conversation is Amrik Sohal, Professor of Management and Director of the Australian Supply Chain Management Research Unit at Monash University. Amrik, welcome to Life Matters.
Thank you very much, Hilary. Good morning to you and your listeners.
Great to have you here. And Enrica Centorame is with us too. She's Managing Director of freight specialist company Global Forwarding. Enrica, welcome to Life Matters.
Good morning, Hilary. Thank you.
Enrica, I'll start with you. I understand there have been delays even going back to March when we saw that container ship get stuck in the Suez Canal. Why did that have such a dramatic impact even this long after?
Well, Hilary, we were having issues even before that, well and truly before that. So that just made a bad situation worse. And it caused a bottleneck that we're still feeling the ramifications of that today.
So I understand there are about 40,000 containers on board. That's a large amount. But you're saying it created delays while it was being cleared as well?
Correct, yes. So when there's a bottleneck in some parts of the world, and because of the pandemic, we've had multiple bottlenecks and multiple lockdowns and multiple points of congestion. Therefore, the Suez Canal issue just created a further issue. So in order for bottlenecks to clear, we have to then clear ports, and we had less people working at ports because staff were in lockdown in different countries at the same time, and then the Delta variant threw a spanner in the works. So it's really been quite a challenging situation.
Yes, indeed. And how big an effect is it having on various kinds of businesses here in Australia from what you're seeing?
It's affected every single industry from what I have seen. Every single part of the economy has been affected. And, here in Australia, Hilary, it's not just the international delays and the shipping costs are very, very high. I'm sure Amrik will touch on that. He is well versed in this area of expertise. So it's not just the international. Once containers arrive in Australia, we also have a situation on our waterfront that really requires some kind of official intervention. So we have a chronic underinvestment in infrastructure combined with the obstruction of a highly militant union presence plus a pandemic equals disaster on the waterfront, equals very, very, very delayed deliveries.
It sounds like there's delays at every single point in the process, from right back to sourcing the raw materials, and we'll get into that with Amrik in a moment. But Enrica, you touched just briefly there on the price of shipping goods into Australia. How much has that increased in recent times?
Oh, well, I've been in the game 25 years and I have honestly never seen prices increase 300 to 400% overnight.
Wow. So I understand it used to cost $2,500 per standard container of goods to import into Australia. What is it now?
Well, from China, at the moment, a 40-foot container can be between 8 and...
Just having some problems with the line there. Sorry, I'll just get you to repeat that, Enrica. We just had a little problem with your line. So from China...
So from China, it's generally, $2,500, $3,000 US, and now we're seeing $8,500, $9,000 US. So for a small to medium business, that really has a significant impact.
Yes, indeed. We're speaking with Enrica Centorame, Managing Director of freight specialist company Global Forwarding. And with us too is Amrik Sohal. He's a Professor of Management and Director of the Australian Supply Chain Management Research Unit at Monash University. And I'd love to hear from you about the particular things that you might be seeing bottlenecks in, whether it's the really small things that many of us order online from time to time, consumer goods of various kinds, or bigger things that you need for your business. We'd love to hear your story on our Facebook page, ABC Radio National. Amrik Sohal, let's quickly clarify what we mean by the term supply chain. What are some of the stages that go into this massive web of logistics and materials?
Thank you, Hilary. Certainly, the supply chains are complex. They are global in nature. A very, very large proportion of our products are manufactured overseas and they arrive here on ships and then on trucks to warehouses and retail stores and sometimes delivered directly to our door. So we are looking at supply chains that extend around the world, and they have many suppliers involved, and many of those suppliers are invisible to us. And it's difficult for us to, in many cases, to track and see where our products might be. So take a simple product such as a pair of sneakers. It contains a very large number of components, 45 components involving 120 steps, and these components and the raw materials involved would be sourced from many countries around the world. So there have been delays, first of all, in the raw material supplies. Then there are delays within the factories where these products are manufactured because of COVID-19 restrictions and factories not operating at full capacity. And as already explained, there have been delays on shipping and so on at the ports. And eventually, of course, when these products arrive in warehouses within Australia, there may be further delays because of, again, COVID-19 restrictions, people not available to work in these warehouses. Of course, we have had problems with the transportation locally, truck drivers not available, and hence the last mile delivery has been difficult as well.
Yeah, and we're hearing about this all around the world, aren't we, where there were shortages of truck drivers in the UK that was contributing to the petrol shortage. I understand too, Amrik, there's a lack of empty containers for cargo ships. Could you explain for our listeners why that is?
So everything around the world is now shipped in containers. So because of restrictions to shipping through ports and so on, when we've had full containers go to a destination, they've been emptied and the containers been sitting empty at a location and not been returned to its original source, if you like, to be filled up again with products. So products sometimes are available at factories to be shipped to destinations around the world, but unfortunately, empty shipping containers are not available at those factories. They may also be waiting at various ports to be transported. Either they are full or empty. But as we've already discussed, there are delays at ports because of various restrictions and lack of workers at these ports and factories and so on.
When COVID hit, it also produced some shifts in demand, didn't it? So suddenly things like textiles had to be redirected. How big an effect did that have, Amrik?
I think that's been a significant impact because we use various raw materials such as cotton and so on for our clothing and so on. Of course, there's been delays in that, but a lot of production and capacity has been diverted to now manufacturing COVID-related items, PPE, and face masks and so on. So there have been, reasonably significant disruption to clothing manufacturing in some factories where capacity has been diverted to manufacturing PPE type of equipment.
Wow, there's a lot going on there in a global supply chain. I wanted to quickly touch too, Amrik, on the idea of the just-in-time model, which is a model that companies use to keep products moving and cut down on the amount of things they have to store on site. What does that model mean in practice these days, and is it sustainable now?
Well, I think we need to rethink our just-in-time models. In the past, we became very, very efficient. In many industries, suppliers of materials and products delivered, multiple times during a day or a week to the assembly factories and so on. So there was no reason for any buffer stocks anywhere along these supply chains. But because of these disruptions to the supply chains, transportation not being available or raw materials not being available, we now have to rethink our just-in-time strategies and really go back to holding some buffer stocks so that we are not left, completely out of stock of raw materials or components. And of course, many of these supply chains became, extended around the globe. So shipping took a long time, freight took a long time, but we are now rethinking our supply chains to see whether they can be more regional and more local. So there is not that, disruption happening, if you like, because of the sorts of problems that we've been experiencing over the last 18 months.
That's really interesting to see that shift towards more local manufacturing, but also more local supply chains in general and transport and logistics. Enrica Centorame, you're the managing director of a freight specialist company. What about that idea that Amrik was talking about of having more buffer stock? Do people have the space to store more stock in case of delays?
Well, yes, Hilary, that's a really good point. But we have to also remember that we've had so many lockdowns, especially in Victoria and then New South Wales as well, where a lot of small to medium businesses have not been able to trade as they normally would have. Therefore, they haven't had the cash flow to actually purchase additional stock levels. So it's been quite a difficult, because I'm very passionate about the SME market, and I see these great businesses struggle with, who they just didn't have the additional cash flow to buy the additional stock to keep just in case they ran out. So it's actually been quite challenging to observe this. The larger retailers, they know what they're doing. They saw it coming. They prepared. They've got the money behind them. So they were able to definitely stock up. So that's why we're seeing the larger retailers have stock on shelves at the moment. That may change in the next month, but at the moment they're well stocked. But the smaller players, the local bookshop and the local florist and all the local businesses, the toy shops, the specialist shops, they really, and boutique-y kind of stationery places and furniture stores, they're just getting back on their feet now.
Yeah, it's been such a hard time for so many businesses. Enrica, US President Joe Biden announced that some of their ports would now work around the clock. Do you think that model could work here? No. Just in one word? No.
The short answer to that is no. It would work. It would work. It would definitely work if we didn't have such a militant union on our waterfront. So for the benefit of your listeners, you may or may not be aware, but 2020 and 2021, we have seen daily, relentless, endless, what we call PIA or protected industrial action in every single port across the nation. Go slows, stop works. So even if we wanted to work 24 hours, it wouldn't happen. It wouldn't happen. We have some of the least, we have a chronic underinvestment in infrastructure on the waterfront, plus very, very low levels of productivity.
And, of course, workers have the right to protest. I know there are some staff at logistics companies set to strike nationally this week too over the level of outsourcing in the industry. So various concerns being expressed there. Amrik Sohal, what are some other measures that different countries are using to manage the backlog? We've heard that idea floated of just having more people on the ground on ports more often. What are some other longer-term strategies you're seeing?
That's a very good question, Hilary. Enrica mentioned SMEs and the cash flow problems they have. We need to lift those companies and help them to invest in emerging technologies, digital technologies. So one of the biggest companies around the world, they are investing in new infrastructure and new technologies. So we need to help our businesses to accelerate their digital roadmap. And move towards more data-driven decision-making, and be able to offer online services as the larger companies do. So one of the things that I notice happening overseas with the large companies such as Johnson & Johnson, Nestle, L'Oreal, and so on, they're all investing heavily in their digital infrastructure and being able to also build resilience and agility in their supply chains. So I think there are a number of things that need to happen here. Integrate our SMEs more with the large businesses that they support. And we don't realize how many SMEs there are. 95+% of all the businesses registered in Australia are SMEs. So that's where a lot of the action is. And as Enrica mentioned earlier on, the large businesses have the capability to make right decisions and make those investments where SMEs are not able to do that.
We've had a question come in from Neil on the text line. I might put this to you, Enrica. Has air freight also increased? Is it now more competitive with sea freight?
Yeah, that's a great question. What we have seen with air freight is some businesses have had no choice but to move traditionally commodities that would never go by air, for example, steel, because it's so heavy and it's so expensive to move things by air. Freight is generally something that is, we need it quick and it's expensive, but we can pay the price because there's margin in the product to do so. But when there are such bottlenecks and delays with ocean freight, then yes, air freight has become the emergency go-to, where we've had clients say to us, we're losing thousands and thousands, but in order for us to stay connected to our client base, we have to move these steel pipes by air.
Wow.
And we're looking at about, it could be 10 to 15 US dollars a kilo on that one.
So some really hard decisions for a lot of businesses there. Just to finish up with, Amrik Sohal, what advice do you have for people thinking about getting started on Christmas shopping this year?
Well, start early. There's just over 2 months to go. So if you are thinking about buying your favorite brand, place your orders early, but also be prepared to, look for alternatives. Your favorite brand may not be available. Your product, in your right color, in your right size, and so on, may not be available. So think of an alternative brand. I've also been saying that we need, as consumers, we need to bring down our expectations. I think we, as consumers, we have become very, very demanding. We need to recognize that, we've had almost 2 years of very difficult times, and we can't have our expectations as we did 2 years ago. So those are the two actually recommendations that I would like to make. To if you are planning, start planning early, but lower your expectations a little bit.
Yep, you might not get it in duck egg blue. You might have to stick with the ochre colour instead.
Sure.
And Enrica Centorame, finally to you, what are you able to tell clients at the moment about what the next few months might look like, or as we even look further ahead into next year?
We try and be as honest as we can and as transparent as we can, and we don't have the answers.
Must be a really hard time.
We just don't know. We really don't know what the next few months look like. So we just work with them with whatever shipments or whatever situations we have on hand at that moment.
And as we heard, uncertainty is bad for business. Well, fingers crossed that situation will resolve as soon as possible, though, as we've heard, there are many, many links in that chain. I really appreciate both of you giving us your time here on Life Matters today. Thank you.
Thank you, Hilary.
Thank you, Hilary.
Enrica Centorame is Managing Director of freight specialist company Global Forwarding, and Amrik Sohal is a Professor of Management and Director of the Australian Supply Chain Management Research Unit at Monash University. And I don't know about you, but I learnt a lot today.